What is the crack, everyone? It's Nathan here, aka the Rambling Kern, and head instructor of Kern School of Combat. So, apologies for the lack of videos over the past few weeks. Past few months just been very busy for myself, so there will be more videos coming, and obviously I have some really big projects I'm trying to plan out for the rest of the year. So, if you want to sponsor me, find my Patreon down below, and if you're interested in classes in Irish martial arts, you'll find us down below as well. So, today's video is more of a kind of commentary, and something that came up in class the other week that I think is an interesting topic and an important one just for getting the most out of your weapons training and stick especially. So basically the topic is around not just kind of what equipment to use, but more so when to use that equipment. And this is kind of a fundamental thing that ends up not allowing us to get the most benefit out of our training. And kind of what do I mean by that? Well, when we train, and I would actually like to shout out to Phil Norman for this, for one of the tricks he showed me for holding pads, and his kind of rationale behind it for boxing. The idea with how we train is that generally we're going to mimic how we do those things in an actual fight. And one of the things that happens quite often for anyone who's boxed or hit pads is that often when you're new to it, you hold the arms way out in front. And as a result, that's the range you get used to hitting. However, you're much better off holding them close to you, and as you back away, almost bringing them in closer, because that's what happens in a fight. People don't stick their head out here and then slowly move their head back, or keep their head out, sorry, and then move away. You know, they keep their guard up and cover up as they get hurt. So when we look at training, we should train in a way that recreates the scenarios that we're going to be in. And one of the things that happens quite a bit around weapons training is people tend to not just ignore equipment, but tend to shun away from it for various different reasons. I know a lot of people say to me that, oh, wearing, protective gear results in a lack of realism. Sure, but you wouldn't deny that a professional boxer could box you very well without gloves on. But those gloves are there to keep their fists safe. It's the same for protective gear that we wear when stick sparring. That's there to keep me safe so that I can train long term. Sure, I could go out and have a duel to the death with a shillelagh or whatever, but I'd get one round out of it, or at least I'd get one training partner, and then we wouldn't be friends again. So what I'm getting at here is that when we do our drills, we want to try recreate the thing that we're doing as best we can. So one of the things that happens a lot, and I'll take something very simple as an example of blocking strikes. Now I'm going to use a aluminium machete trainer here. So this is completely blunt, but great little useful training tool. And unlike most of my sticks, you'll actually be able to see this in frame because it's not 3 foot plus tall. One thing that happens a lot when we do our blocks is that when our partner starts to swing for us, or we start to swing at our partner, is that we swing for the stick that we're, or whatever the weapon is we're using, we swing for that rather than for our partner. And this results in very bad habits being formed because we want to strike out to our partner, not at their weapon. So, for example, if I was doing like an outside block, like something like this, a very common sort of block in many systems, if we're doing this and we're targeting this rather than this, the person can slowly start to shift and their block can be all over the place because the person's ultimately hitting the stick and not trying to hit them. Now, obviously, if we're training with no protective gear on, we can't do that. Because if I go and hit them in the head, they're going to be, terribly injured. So that's where proper training gear comes into place. But that's even second to the intent behind the drills. And that's something that I find is very, very fundamental to what we should be doing when we're practicing our drills together. Because if we're not actually trying to hit our opponent, we're not going to get the most out of those drills. We're also not going to learn the timing, the distance, and the speed that we need for those things, both for the person receiving and the person giving. So what I mean by that is if you have someone who's, let's say, doing an attack, let's say simple, forehand attack, we have those with our sticks, them with all sorts of various different styles too. If we're doing something like a forehand strike and our partner is way away from us and they're just holding their weapon out here, we're not going to get used to trying to hit their head. maybe we might get used to the idea of hitting their hand, but if we don't hit their hand, we just keep focusing on the stick up here. We're not practicing on hitting the target that we're actually going to try hit when it comes to sparring or having to use it in a realistic scenario. So a very quick example of some of the gear that we use. I'll bring up a few images of some of the other gear that we use, but the first one is fencing mask. So this is a Red Dragon fencing mask. These are good and robust. I know some people prefer lighter masks, some with a little bit more give, but we get these at a great cost, a great price I should say. They're not a great cost, they're a low cost, but that's why we get them. And very basic fencing mask, good and sturdy. As you can see, there's a few dents on it from getting hit with sticks over the years, but these hold up fantastically and they keep the entire face and side and top of the head covered, which is very, very important. Now, some of the Dog Brother guys will cut away the bib here so that they can keep their chin down. That's a personal preference thing. I keep this here because I also use this for fencing from time to time. So personal preference, slightly better to have it there for myself. Now, for the likes of HEMA and all that sort of stuff, a lot of people will use the back of the head protectors. I have one here somewhere, but I don't have it to hand, so I'll bring up a picture of what that is. But basically, that's just a cover to cover up the back of the head. Now, for us, we don't use that because when we go to ground, we want to be able to get the mask off quickly so that we can continue the fight without the mask obstructing us. One thing that happens very commonly, even if we have the bib cut away, is that the mask can slide up and this lower portion here can cover your eyes and then you're basically blind. So that's when we come to sparring. However, when we come to drills, something like this is perfect because let's say we're doing a simple thrust and block drill. Now I can safely thrust on my partner's face and not risk injuring them. And that's very, very key. So that way we can actually practice our drills with accuracy and make sure that we actually are trying to hit the target that we are actually focusing on, rather than, hitting way out in the air and not actually fighting and training with intent. This is something that is key, and really, 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 really can't emphasize enough when it comes to weapons training how different the ranges are and how important they are. And I'm going to do some videos on that over the next while, but the ranges that we're used to in unarmed, say like boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, whatever the discipline you do, those ranges are very different to what happens when we have a weapon, because when we have a weapon, and something like this is actually a fantastic example. I have a good long reach, so, see, coming off camera here, if I can fit myself in, I can potentially hit something right at the end of there, but also if we pull ourselves right the way in, you can still hit something here with it, be it a thrust or a close-in cut. So those ranges become very, very different because you're used to kind of, here, but now you've added an extra bit of this on, and with a weapon, a simple step or a lunge can add a huge amount of range, and make where we thought we were safe a terrible place to be. So really important thing to consider. Now the other thing I use is these. These are primarily my sparring gloves. This one's seen better days. It's literally being held together by tape at this point. As you can see, fairly thin, fairly minimal padding. Main reason for using these for sparring is so that I move my hands. It gives me enough protection to not take any severe damage, but if I take a bad hit with these, I will know about it. Now I do have heavier gloves that I use for drilling so that I can allow my guys to really wear on my hands, but those aren't something that I would use all the time. If I had to pick one glove, I would do something somewhere in between, and that's really down to your personal preference. Do you want to spar with the level of intent and minimal gear that I do, or do you want to just spar with the level of safety and not really push the envelope on risk and reward? So something like the Red Dragon gloves are kind of a good compromise for the likes of the stick work we do. Obviously, if you're doing sword work, you want heavier gloves, and if you're doing much lighter weapons, you want lighter gloves. Very simple thing to take into account. But when we're drilling and we're training, if we're doing a drill where we're focusing on getting our hand hit, and you're the person, say, again, doing that forehand and someone counters with a shot to that hand, you want a good robust glove because you're going to be taking repetitive hits over and over and over. So it's an important one to do. However, if we don't have gloves, then we can't train that. So there's kind of a few fundamental things that you really do want to have in order to get the most out of your training. Now, another little thing I want to talk about is targeting. So one thing that happens a lot And for this, I'm going to show with two of these. One thing that happens a lot when we start to train, there is a strange thing that people do where we look kind of basically down our nose, not down our nose at people, but we kind of look at this direction. We don't look straight forward often when we're fighting. Generally because we're looking straight forward, but we tuck our chin to keep our chin safe, and now we're looking down here. Often the result of that is when we start to swing our weapon, our strike, rather than going here at this line towards our opponent's head, now it starts to angle down. You see this most commonly when people are doing like double weapon drills, and now the weapon starts to move and flow around down here and do all these sort of movements where the weapon is down at this range. So when we start to do this, now we're fighting at this range down here and doing all of these sort of, say double stick or double, sword, whatever the style it is that you do. That's when you start to see these downward motions appear. And the problem with that is if we're aiming at a person's head and that's what we're trying to hit, we're not going to hit it. So if we kind of build up the reps, and that's where we get used to, our swing will be out here and our intent will be down here. That's not where we want to hit. So we want to make sure we're focusing at something at head height. If you're training solo, if you have a bag or a tire, a video on how to make a tire target, put like a sticker on it or set like a, this is head, a bit of paint, whatever it is, and know that that's where you're aiming for. Some heavy bags have the same thing. They have a number system or whatever to ensure that that's where you're going for. It's the same thing when we're drilling. We don't want to, if we're aiming at focusing on hitting our head, we don't want to hold our weapon out here because this isn't our head height. We want to hold it up here to make sure our partner is actually trying to hit at head height. So for a lot of you, this will be nothing new. It'll be stuff that you're all used to. I'm sure there's plenty of martial artists out there. This is in no way new to you. But these are just very important considerations, especially to people who've not really trained in weapon arts, or people who are new to weapon arts and have done a bit of training. These are kind of things that you don't really think about until they get pointed out to you. And I've had people point these out to me over the years, and they're really valuable lessons that really help you get the most out of your drills and really have the most transference over to sparring and our live drills. This is, like I said, simple stuff, but really, really beneficial to you in the long term, be it if you're training with partners or be it if you're training solo. I really do recommend doing it this way. Obviously, if you guys have any questions or would like to know more or would like to see other videos similar to this, please do let me know. Leave a comment down below. If you haven't, I would ask you to please subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you anything and really does help me. Once again, thank you so much everyone for the support. Like I said, apologies for the delays with the videos, but past while has been quite busy for me, but I will have plenty more videos in the works. If you have any questions on this or any questions on equipment or drills, leave a comment down below. I'm more than happy to discuss them with you. I do try respond to every comment on my channel. And if you're wondering, what sort of equipment you should get, I've done various different videos. You can go back to my channel and look at those. Once again, thank you all so much for your support. Thank you for watching the video. Like I said, if you have any questions, leave a comment down below. Thank you very much, and Assalam.